Welcome to One Insight. My name is Litvin. I grew up in London and I now live in LA. And this is a podcast for extraordinary top performers and their coaches. You see, I've coached some of the most successful and talented people on the planet. I can see what most people cannot see, and I dare to say what most people wouldn't dare to say. And what I know about success is that on the other side of it, it can be incredibly lonely. You can feel more of an imposter the more successful you become. And when you're the most interesting person in the room, you're actually in the wrong room. Clients who are more successful, more intelligent, and wealthier than you need your support more than they know and more than you can imagine. I coach around insight. Life looks one way, something happens, and the world looks different, and your entire world changes. It can happen in an instant. And this podcast is called One Insight because a single insight can change everything. Oh, wow. That was a fun episode I just recorded. I want to tell you about it. I'm going to call it Courage in My Blood because that's who I'm speaking to, a woman who has courage in her blood. We start off by talking about her book. It's interesting, and I give her a really powerful way to articulate that book out into the world. And then it looks like we're done. But we keep going. And because this is still recorded, I say, okay, let's pause the recording there because I know Laura on my team will edit it and we'll stop. But we keep talking. And then something interesting happens. So I say, let's keep this keep the recording and we'll use this and I'll send this out to everybody. And then we get to a place where I say, okay, I think we're there. And we pause and I say, Laura, now you can edit it here. And then we keep going. And because the recording was on the whole time, when you listen or watch this episode, you're going to see some really powerful ideas and insights that come as a result of keeping going with a client when they have something that looks really impossible. When you can challenge your clients to think about the impossible, everything can shift. And you can't turn an impossible goal into a 17-step plan. So it has to be something they roll around in their mind for days, weeks, months, or years. And it makes a massive difference. I had so much fun. I can feel this energy in my body right now as I'm introducing this because I just recorded this. Enjoy. Hi, Alina.
Hi, Rich.
Hey. So this is really fun because what we just talked about for a moment before we began is that it's almost 2 years ago that we recorded the first podcast episode together, you and I.
Yes. Yeah. And it's incredible. I rewatched it and it's so much has happened since. And a lot of it, almost I could call it your predictions, definitely your insights, a lot of your advice in that one episode have come true, which is amazing to celebrate.
I love that. So I'm going to see if my team can put that episode together with this one. It'd be fun to see that journey. So bring us up to date. Tell me what's happened since that podcast episode. If you just re-listened to it, what did you notice? And then what's happened since?
Yeah. So when in that episode, you coached me on the book that was being born at the time. And I just finished a draft. I wasn't sure which way I was going to go. Was it, I was hoping to get a mainstream publisher, but at the time I was very unsure. I was considering self-publishing. So we talked about all of those options and what they meant for me. And you also helped me to refine the title. So the title was Audacity Spectrum as I came into the podcast, and I went out with the Audacity Spectrum. So that was, and then we played with the tagline, which at the time was dare, care, or and not care, or dialing up the courage to dare, care, not care. And we played a lot with that. Now, fast forward where I am today, the book is being published by a mainstream publisher, the biggest independent publisher in the UK. So I'm very proud of that. Thank you. And the title is The Audacity Spectrum. The tagline is leading with care. So I kept that in, courage and non-conformity. Mm-hmm. And what happened in between, the interesting thing that summer, so I had the podcast with you in June 21. And then I was courting with another mainstream publisher, which they really loved the idea during the summer. And they were almost courting me, but where we got to is they didn't like the word audacity in the title. And as a result of the podcast with you at the time, I was so clear I wasn't going to give up on the audacity, and I wasn't going to give up on the structure that already existed. So it was a very quick no for me, which looking back, I'm so proud of. That's one of the things that you taught me. That's one of my biggest challenges, to say no. But that's saying no to that. So that was September. And then by the end of the year, I had this mainstream publisher, which is an audacious publisher, and I'm very proud to be publishing with them.
Nice. Well, of course they're audacious. That's why it makes sense that they're publishing this particular book. For anyone who's listening, what's it about? What's the premise behind this book?
So it's called The Spectrum because, my son is on the autism spectrum. So there is a backstory to it. There's actually 10 years since he was diagnosed. He was 9 when he was diagnosed. He's 19 this year. And the whole premise of the book is the teaching people, if you like, to lead with courage or daring, but also with care. So my own definition of audacity is introducing this additional dimension of caring, because this is through the lesson that I've had with my own son, Dan, is really caring about his story, is caring about his difference, actually. So I had to learn to understand the difference, to celebrate the difference. And so the book is all about the two sides of the spectrum. And that's the other thing in the other.
Help me understand. I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I want to ask, what's the result? If I read that book and I apply it, what's the difference it's going to make in my life?
You're going to be more audacious. So you're going to be more daring and more caring, understanding what that really means. And the fact that you can stretch those, to the extremes. So, the spectrum has got the two extremes. And I always say, I suppose bringing the spectrum, the autism spectrum, and my experience of it is, I always talk about the range. And that's one thing I've learned from you. So anybody for your...
I'm going to pause you again because I'm losing you a little bit. You're at a high level of abstraction. You're talking about range and daring and caring, and these are interesting words, but you've got, each time you say one of them, my mind goes off, well, what does that mean? What does daring look like? What does caring look like? What's the impact going to be on the kind of leader who reads this book and applies it? So let me give a better backstory behind your son's story. There's your story. You were highly successful in the world of finance in the city of London. It is a very male-dominated world, very hard for a female to rise up and to be successful in that world, and you were incredibly successful. And you have worked with leaders ever since in different ways, coach, consultant, trusted advisor. What was the elements of daring that you brought in back then? And then I'll talk about how that shifted. But how did you have so much success in that world back then?
Oh, I mean, I suppose I've got, someone will say I've got courage in my blood. So I'm originally from Romania. Yes. So, and this is an interesting perspective. So when clients work with me and they'll say to you, one thing they get at the end of it is courage. So I always say, that's what I give people, more courage. And because I probably have a lot myself. So I left the country with $100 in my pocket. And then I came and did a second degree here in the UK. So I live in London. I've been living in the UK for 30 years now, but I grew up in Romania for the first 20. So it's risk. I am a risk taker. And for me, this is an absolutely essential ingredient, of course, of daring is taking risks, being willing to take risks. So that's what I was the head of trading, for a big reputable institution, because I loved taking risks with other people's money. And therefore, so for me, it's now taking risk and teaching people now to take risks in their personal life, which is actually much more difficult than taking risks with people's money, or certainly that's my experience. So for me, I came from there, and I have this, I suppose the two biggest gifts would be courage, I suppose would be one. And the other one is this belief that anything is possible, which I've learned from my dad. So that's the sort of two things that carried me through my life and made me a successful trader and a successful investment banker and everything else, and now a coach. But it is the it is a risk. So going back to your original question, that's the daring part of the book, which is what most people will associate with audacity, is the daring part. And even the definition in the dictionary, it is about that daring, but it's got this negative.
Let me ask you a question. Head of trading, what was the company you worked for when you were head of trading?
Rothschild.
Yeah. So let me share something with you right now. I'm imagining that podcast ended. My wife's walked in and said, "Who are you talking to?" Or she knows you. So let's say a friend walks in and says, "What are you up to just now?" Here's how I respond. So I was just having a conversation with Alina Addison. Alina grew up in Romania. In fact, 30 years ago, she left Romania with $100 in her pocket, came all the way to England, and rose up to become head of trading at Rothschild's, one of the most prestigious financial institutions on the planet. What I know about Alina is she has something that most people don't have. She has courage in her blood. It's enabled her to do things that most people could never do. And what she does is, as a consultant and trusted advisor to successful leaders like her, she helps them do three things. Build their courage muscle. So they have the courage to take on almost any project. Behind that, she helps them develop a deep belief that anything is possible. And the third thing she does, she helps them get comfortable with taking massive risks. And if you imagine that Venn diagram with courage, deep belief, and risk-taking, at the center of that, when you can increase your courage, increase your belief that anything is possible and your belief in yourself and the ability to take risks, then everything shifts. And she wrote a book about that called The Audacity Spectrum.
Yeah, it's all sort of landing. And as I'm listening to you, Rich, I'm thinking there's a one big piece missing from that, which is the caring part. And yes, it's how do you do all of that and still really care about others, which I do deeply, and care about your own mission, which sometimes caring about others, caring about the mission, which you and I talked at times, and also not forgetting to care about yourself, which is my biggest challenge.
Right. So let me add one piece in. I'm still talking to that person. I'll add this piece in. There are four elements that Alina teaches. I've mentioned three already: courage, risk, and belief. And the fourth one is caring. And it's an unusual one because highly successful leaders forget about this all the time. So there are three elements of caring. There's caring for the mission, which we don't hesitate to think about. We are driven, we are mission focused. There's the caring for the mission. There's caring for ourselves and there's caring for others. And if you don't have all three elements of caring there, you're never going to be as successful as you could be in life. Caring for others beyond the mission means you could be a great leader. You have a team who rally around you. You have an organization that is on purpose because they know that you care about them. But if you don't, underneath all of that, take care of yourself, then none of this can happen. Because most successful leaders burn out at some point because they were never, ever taught to start by caring for themselves. When you put those four things together, caring, courage, risk, and belief, you can do almost anything. And if you read the book, The Audacity Spectrum, you will find out how.
Thank you. And now I've got the what do they call it? The sort of the back side of the book all sorted. That's a first biggest insight. Thank you.
Yeah, that's literally, we just wrote the back of the book.
Yes.
And what I'm doing is I'm drawing out the mistake that coaches make as they try and sell the process instead of the outcome. The outcome of this is really inspiring for a leader. Wow, I could grow my courage muscle. I could grow my ability to take risks. I could believe even more that anything is possible. And now I have this new distinction about caring, that it's beyond the mission, that it's for others and for myself, and put all those four elements together. And I'm going to be more successful in life, in business, in my personal life. If I face personal challenges like you did, raising a son who has unique ways of showing up in the world, that you can fight the system and create all sorts of extraordinary things for him. And he's just come back from Thailand, right? People would have said it'd be impossible for him to travel on his own, and he went to Thailand on his own. I know how proud you are of him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that is talking about impossible dreams. And this is one of my, I always say to everybody, dare to dream, and dare to dream big. Because that's what we should use the imagination for. And even for myself, sometimes I have to pinch. But yes, Dan went to Thailand, and he's going to go to Kenya next week. I mean, it's amazing. That would have been totally impossible even just a year ago. Never mind when you and I met.
But what I know is two things. The first is you have done the work. This makes me emotional even in this moment. You've done the work. So we can talk to our kids about what they need to do in life, but if we're not doing that work, they're watching how we are showing up and they're who we are being. So the work you have done for the last 30 years on building that courage muscle more and more and more, taking more risks, doing things that look impossible, believing in yourself, believing in the impossible, and caring for others, as well as yourself, as well as the mission. That's inside of him now. And so even though he shows up differently in the world, he's got that inside of him. Courage is in his blood too.
And I'm getting very emotional, but also my heart is smiling a bit. I'll tell you a story. Just, talking about Dan, and I know this is, but he called me a few days ago. So one of his challenges, and, don't want to tell his story, but, it's making connections, deep connections. So, for him to make friends. So he's struggled. He's now going into his second year at university doing animal science and zoo management, which was his own dream. But he's just made a new friend. So he called me and he said, Mum, I've got this amazing friend and he's like you. And I was really perplexed. It's like, what does it mean he's like me? He's like you. He is so positive. He keeps telling me that everything is possible. He just happens to be American, by the way. And he said, do all Americans are they all positive? And I said, well, probably more so than other people. But yes, so I took it as such a compliment that he made that parallel between his friend and, the positive mindset. It warmed my heart.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Hey, I'm curious because if it was 2 years ago that the last podcast episode came out, I can't wait in 2 years' time when we do this again to see what could have happened. What's your dream? What if you come on that call with me and say, holy shit, Rich, you won't believe what's happened in the last 2 years. What will have happened in the last 2 years as you look back?
I'm going to be mischievous. I'm going to answer the question. But before I answer your question, you took me back to when you and I first met, which were sort of 5 years ago, and you asked that same question. You said 3 years rather than 2 years. And I really thought, what's impossible? What would we celebrate? And I remember at the time thinking, I'm going to be in your community, which at the time seemed impossible. So, I'm now in 4PC and this is my third year. My son would be in university. That just, it was not even entering the range because it just seemed impossible. And I would have written a book. And it just, all of it felt so silly to say it out loud, but I dared to say it. And then it didn't take 3. It's a little bit longer than 3 years, but hey ho, all of those 3 things happened. So humans are really good at doing the impossible. They're not very good at estimating timelines. When I do this exercise, it's about creating the future. It doesn't matter. At some point, you might say you don't want something you envision right now, but you have to embody it, and it's what's the start of the process. For me, a goal is a place to come from, not a place to get to anyway. So let's dream for a second. If you called me and said, life's amazing, what might you be talking about? And then we'll see what happens. Well, I'll start, as any parent out there, they will know, I'm going to start with my kids first. So Dan would have graduated his university and he will be traveling the world somewhere, doing what he loves best. My daughter, who's now 16 and she's done her GCSEs and, very proud of her. She's done incredibly well, but she would have gone into the first university of her choice. So 2 years would be the time. And then my book would have been a bestseller, if I were to dare and dream big. And my business, so my company, would have done some amazing leadership programs, which is we've sort of started to do. And actually, if I wanted to be really, this is impossible daring. is having, I've got the hotel. So that's probably the biggest risk taker in the middle of all of this. In the last 20 years, I built that hotel in Transylvania, but would be to build another retreat center next to it. That just would be the most amazing dream ever.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait till we bring 4PC to that retreat center.
That would be amazing. I mean, actually, yeah, let's put that. That would make the almost like the cherry on the top. Imagine that, all of us celebrating 4PC in Transylvania into the new retreat center.
Said a few goals just then. I love the idea of a breakthrough goal. When a client's got a bunch of goals, I like to ask, what's the one goal that if you focus on that to the exclusion of everything else, it'll be most likely that everything else would happen anyway?
See, my energy goes into the, really leveraging the hotel for leadership experiences, because I think everything else will sort of follow from there.
Yeah, me too. That was my sense. Cool. Well, let me model for everyone who's watching, the thing about working with highly driven, highly motivated top performers is we get to an insight and we're done. We don't need to turn this into a little plan now. Where's the strategy for you to make this happen? You've got a track record of doing impossible things when we're on the journey together. So I think I'll take you off the hot seat.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rich.
And we'll pause there. Thanks, Alina.
Thank you.
That was fun. I do look forward to let's do this in 2 years. We'll make a note and see what
I know. Then you went 2 years rather than 3. It's like, wow, that makes it seems even more impossible now. If we were to accelerate it with 2. But yeah.
Well, that sometimes it's a fun goal. I think, is it Naval Ravikant, somebody who says, what do you want to accomplish in 10 years? Okay, now your job is to accomplish it in 1. It blows you like, how would I do that? Well, but the thinking, it's not that it might still take 10 years. It doesn't matter. But that you've thought about what you would do in a single year in order to make that happen in what you plan for in 10, you'll be doing different things than if you thought, if I've got 10 years, I'll do this in 2, I'll do this in 7. Like, it changes everything. So you've got the one thing to focus on, because everything you said, like, we both see it happening. Leadership programs, more's going to come. So, what if you create that retreat center, and how could you make it effortless?
Yes, I mean, it just seemed because it's to create the retreat center means to build the damn thing. So, the idea of having a construction site and all of that entails it, and have it all done within 2 years, it's just like, oh, how is that going to happen?
So let me offer you a thought. Again, get outside the box.
Yes.
What if you didn't have to do any building? Right. So if you listen to the face Alina made was just priceless. I don't know. But it's an interesting question to ask. What if I could create a retreat center without building it? So 2 things come to mind immediately. Well, what if there was a retreat center close by? You didn't even know it. And that actually, before you realized it, doesn't turn out to build anything. There's somewhere nearby that we can use as the retreat center. What if you had some prefabricated buildings that were brought in that made something? What if you had yurts instead of brick buildings? I'm asking an interesting question because it challenges your thinking, like, oh God, we've got to do all this building for the next 3 years. Now we've got dust everywhere, can't even have the hotel open. What if you didn't have to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that would be amazing. Just because that's the first thing, of course, it comes to mind is all the dust, all of the cranes and everything that are just next door to the hotel. I mean, it just drains the energy out just thinking about that particular stage. But if there was a way, you just bring them all in and crane them prefabricated, as you said, just put them on and we're done.
So this is the power of asking questions when you've got something that looks like a challenging goal to say, well, what would make it impossible? What would make it impossible was we didn't have to do any building work at all. Okay, that's a great premise. How would that happen?
Yes.
Now I really will take you off the hot seat.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alina.
Thank you.
That was great. I'm going to tell Laura to leave that piece in because it was great.
Yes, that was a good sort of addition to it. But yeah. I suppose if I were to just overthink it again, it's like, yeah, Rich, but I need to find all that money and all of that investment, all of the practicalities. And when you go into your head.
Okay, well, let's keep going. I'm going to tell Laura not to. Yeah, and let's keep going. Great. Okay. well, what if you could create this without spending a penny?
I mean, that just seems so out of reach, even to dream it, to be honest.
But if I'm right, tell me if I'm wrong. You have a track
Mhm.
record of doing impossible things.
Yes.
So I just up the ante. If you can do something impossible, might as well make it really impossible. It's either impossible or really impossible. It's the same thing. So now I've said, what if you could do it without any money?
Mm.
Okay, well, now you've got to get correct. How would we possibly do it without money? And don't do this alone. Get your team together. Let's do a brainstorming session in 4PC. Alina wants to build a retreat center at a hotel. However, there cannot be any dust or building that happens. And she's not going to spend a penny to make it happen. And it's all going to happen within 2 years.
I did-
That's
but
an
just
interesting and
give me-
challenging question. Yeah.
Of course. Because I mean, I'd love to see, you're right, having that creativity and see what people come up with, sort of like crazy, nuts, mischievous ideas. I'd love to, because for me right now, there is, even if for someone like me who thinks the impossible is like, how? I need someone to just do the puzzle for me.
So I just coached somebody who's a podiatrist, and his vision was within 5 years, he'd sell his business to venture capital. And I had a friend of mine who's a business consultant with me, and he pointed out, well, look, even if VCs are interested in 5 years' time, they're probably going to still tie you into that business for years going into the future. They're not saying you can sell it and walk away. They want you involved in running it because you've done it so well. So this dream you have in 5 years, it's all done and dusted, and you walk away, probably never going to happen. And if you wait for 5 years to try and sell it, who knows what's going on in the VC world at that time? And he sowed this seed for something completely unique that blew this guy's mind. He said, well, what if you had 20 other podiatry businesses that you helped to build? So, because he was working with me because he wanted to have, in 5 years' time, the dream was to leave that behind and have coaching clients and become a coach. And we said, well, what if you made your clients other podiatrists who want to build and scale a business? And so instead of building your business to several million, you can have 20 other companies, small businesses, that each going to grow to $1 million each. And you'll get equity in each of those businesses. And as a conglomerate, you'll have a $20 million business. And each of those people, just to up the ante even higher, you have a very high bar on who you let in. It's not any podiatrist. It has to be someone like you, young and hungry, and they want to play golf 4 days a week. They don't want to be working 7 days a week in that office, because many people do. He doesn't. People have to be like. So what if you could do it? And the vision has gone from, how could I hustle for 5 more years and eventually sell my business, hopefully walk away, which doesn't actually seem likely, to, and then hopefully have some coaching clients when I haven't even tried to get clients. Now, oh my God, I'm going to enroll one at a time. Owners want to scale to $1 million each, which he knows how to help them do. 20 of them, get equity in each of those businesses, and then sell a $20 million business to private equity or to VCs. How cool is that?
Oh, I love it. Oh, I absolutely love it. And you wouldn't see it. Expanding it to that.
I tell you that story to share with you what looks impossible to you right now, or looks challenging, or looks hard, just because we haven't seen a new way of doing it.
Yes. No, I'd love that. Yes, absolutely. I'm well up for it.
So I'm not going to try and do that right now, but I'd love to leave you with this powerful question, and then please, let's bring it into a 4PC session. We can put 30 minds on this problem. Here's the problem. Alina wants to have, within 2 years, an amazing retreat center at this hotel in Transylvania. She doesn't want to spend a penny to make it happen, and she doesn't want to do any building work either. And that's the problem.
That is it. And I'll tell you, the prize is, we will do the 4PC reunion there with the champagne, cutting the ribbon of this retreat center.
I'm in.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're really here. Thanks, Alina.
Thank you. That was fun. Thank you. I will, we'll see you tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, that was fun. Let's bring this into 4PC. That'll be fun.
Yeah, no, I love that. No, that was fun. See, you don't know what you're going to be coached on. And now I've got this big dream. That's so fun to dream about now. Don't worry, I'm just finding things to dream.
Game I like to play is much more interesting than wrestling with a boring question down here. How are we going to do this without getting too dusty in the hotel? Like, that's not an inspiring question.
Totally. And for me, it's like, I go that too. But now dreaming about something impossible, it's get the board, get the colors. get the pens out, and I love that daring. Bring it to the 4PC and see what they think.
Well, all we need is a woman who has a lot of courage, an ability to take risks, a belief that anything is possible, and is willing to care for herself, for others, and for her mission. And then we're going to make this magic happen. If only we knew someone like that.
Oh, I knew you'd say that. If only we. But thank you. Well fun. Thank you. Lots of love. Bye.
For most of human history, it wasn't called coaching, it was called leadership. And it's what I love to do, to coach people, to lead people, and to mess with people's thinking. If you'd like more of this, or if you'd like to learn more about our community of extraordinary top performers, go to richlitvin.com/oneinsight.